You have this 4-hour dinner that ends up occurring with your dad shortly after you have this epiphany moment in West Baltimore. Even if you didn't want to have that conversation with him about real estate, about this thing that since you were a kid, you were like, no, I'm proving myself to not necessarily need to be associated with this. I'm my own man. At that time, I'm my own boy, but I'm my own man, building this thing for myself. And yet all roads, pun intended, lead back to this dinner. And this was a very important dinner for you because it was where Seawall was born. But how did that dinner play out for you in your memory?
Hmm. So I get in my car after this experience in West Baltimore, and I want to be really clear about this sensitivity of the story that I've just told. I've always been really aware of the privilege that I have to be able to go into any community that I want and leave whenever I want, you know, and that isn't the case for everybody. And I've always been really aware and sensitive of that. So I don't
Mm,
take the telling of this story lightly, and the privilege that I know that I have to be able to make the decision of where I show up, for how long I show up, and in what
mm-hmm.
context I show up in.
Yeah.
So I get back to my car and I'm scribbling down notes, and I realize that there's only one person on the planet that can hold the space that I need them to hold in this moment. And I call my dad. My dad, tied with my mom, is my greatest hero, right? He's just
Yeah.
the most humble man you'll ever meet, super passionate about community and kids and education and listening, and just been a hero and role model to me my entire life. And I say, Dad, I've just had this really incredible experience I'd love to share with you. When can we meet up? And we agree to meet up for dinner. And we're at this nondescript Outback Steakhouse in some suburban strip shopping center.
Nice.
And I'm trying as best I can to share with him the experience that I've had. And what I really want to do is I want to ask him if he'll help me start a real estate company. And as you said, I was adamant my entire life that I wanted nothing to do with real estate. It felt like something that would have been handed to me on a silver platter. It was the expectation, at least I thought, of everybody in my circle, that that's where I would end up because it's what my family had done for forever. It was low hanging fruit. It was the path of least resistance. It was too easy. So I never wanted anything to do with it. I didn't like the long hours that I saw my dad work. I felt like it took him away from me at a young age when I needed him the most.
Mm,
And I was just convinced that I would never go near that industry. But with this question that had started to grow about real estate's role in actually keeping us apart, it was a question that I needed to ask. So at dinner, awkwardly, I tell my dad the story and I ask him if he'll help me start a real estate company. It probably didn't roll off my tongue and the delivery was terrible, but I remember my dad sitting back. And so he had spent 25 years in a family run real estate company. And when I had left to go start the Peace Players program, he had gotten out of real estate altogether and he had gotten into public education in Baltimore City. He was so passionate about the
mm,
importance of providing incredible education for the future generations of our planet. His first job out of college, and he had studied to be a first grade teacher. And that was actually what his first job was. And he had gotten sucked into the family owned real estate company. And when he had found a window to get out, he gladly got out of real estate because it become so focused on how much money you could make and how fast you could make it. It had become so focused on transactions and not relationships.
mm-hmm.
And that was the opposite of the reason that he woke up every morning and the reason he had gotten into the business to begin with. So as I asked him if he'd help me start a real estate company, he sits there. I clearly caught him off guard. The silence felt like an eternity. My dad has this way of like locking his eyes into yours. And I'm sweating. And he says, I have no interest in getting back into the real estate business. And now my heart's broken. I'm trying not to cry, right? It's taken all of the courage to even ask this question. And if the first silence was long and awkward, the second silence that ensued was twice as long and twice as awkward. And then, moments later, he says, but I would be really interested in helping you launch a company that reimagined the real estate industry. Now he's speaking my language, right? I'm on the heels of the Peace Players program where we had reimagined the basketball industry. It had nothing to do with going to foreign countries and trying to find the next NBA superstars and profiting off their success. It had very little to do with even the act of dribbling and shooting a basketball. It was all about how a round ball in the sport reimagined could bring kids from war-torn countries together.
Yeah.
How we could create incredible leaders as a result of it. And here my dad was saying that the real estate industry, this thing that I wanted nothing to do with, but I had just had this major realization was the reason we were so divided to begin with, could be reimagined. So for the next 4 hours, not even touching our food, Chris, we're riffing back and forth, sharing our lived experiences of how community is created, how ideas are grown, how to humbly lead quietly behind the scenes, letting everyone else shine. And at the end of that dinner, we stand up, give each other a huge hug, and agree to move forward with the launch of Seawall, whose mission was to use buildings to empower communities, unite cities, and help to launch really powerful ideas.